Hey guys, and welcome to the channel. Welcome back, and today's going to be an unusual video. I would like to share with you my experience of how I fly and take you throughout the whole training flight that I do. And I'm going to comment in details what I do and what you see on the video. So every flight starts with a pre-fly of the airplane, and I fly Cessna 172 SP. I basically go around the airplane. I check the fuel. As you see, I'm using a fuel stick, which physically tells me what is the amount of fuel I have on board in my wings. And I sample both of the wings because the fuel tanks are in left and right wing of a Cessna. I make sure that I have enough for the flight. And when I have the fuel quantity, I basically enter it in my stopwatch, so I know approximately the endurance to how long I can stay in the air. Then I check my my wheels and my steering wheel just to check everything is great and everything is in place. I check the propeller. All the edges have to be pretty smooth and without damages. Continue going around the airplane, and I'm checking the static port, which is on the left side of the airplane, and that helps us to measure the airspeed. And I also check the pitot port, which helps us to measure the speed. Right now, I'm basically sampling the fuel. We have 5 spots where I can sample the fuel on each wing, and what it does, it helps me to determine if the fuel is okay, if I don't have any debris in the fuel, if I don't have any water or liquid that's not supposed to be there. And the fuel we have is 100 LL, low lead fuel for Cessna for the engine, and the fuel is graded tinted a blue color, so it's easy to see that I've got the right fuel. I also have to smell the fuel and make sure it doesn't smell like a kerosene, just in case that things happen. There's been accidents where people mix up fueling tanks and or fueling machines, and they would put kerosene into just a regular gasoline engine, and obviously it's you can only do it once, right? Because engine quits if you're flying, and that's it. Also, water is important. Make sure there's no water, because obviously engines don't run on water, and it would be unfortunate to have water. So those drainages allow me to see if there's water or any other debris. If there are debris that I don't like, I'm not flying. It just tells me that something is not right. It's either structural damage inside, or maybe airplane has been painted recently, or there's been new parts installed that are not properly set up, and there's some debris. I also check ailerons and checked the flaps just a few seconds ago, and now I'm continuing my fuel sump on the right wing, do the same thing, making sure there's no water. And it's easy to tell water from the gasoline, because water will stay, and you will basically see a layer of clear liquid. Always check the collar. There's been so many incidents where people will just check it, and if you have a lot of water for some reason in your tanks and you sump them and it's just clear color, you can assume that it's fuel, and you don't check the color, and once you take off, the engine dies, and it's not really good. I have checked the oil. Oil has to be above 6 quarters, and right now, I took all the sampling fuel, which was clean, and I put it in one of the tanks. In this case, I'm putting it in the right tank because that's where I'm finishing my walkthrough. And basically, we are almost done. Right before I did this external pre-flight check, I also checked the electronics. So you see the flaps already lowered. I flipped the master switch, yelled clear, just in case if there's some excessive engine fuel. What I'm doing right now is I'm rolling the airplane out to check all the tires, and I'm kind of looking at them if I don't see any cords or damaged tires, and I'm rolling a good amount of distance so I can see left, right, center wheels and make sure they're all in a good condition. Just for the safety, but also make sure that I don't pay for somebody else's mistake. If somebody who flew that airplane before me made a hard landing and it was a flat spot, I have to report it. Otherwise, if somebody discovers it after I fly and I didn't see it, I'm going to pay for it, and we don't want to do that. After everything is done, I'm right now in this particular case basically checking the weather. So I flipped the master switch in avionics and I look it up to turn on the radio, and I did a wind check because it was a windy day. As you can see, the things are shaking a little bit, the trees and stuff. It's been a windy day. I needed to make sure that wind is within my limitations. I'm still a student pilot, and that's how we do things. Check things to make sure it's safe. All right. So in the airplane, we got the startup checklist. We've checked everything. I have my checklist handy right there, and the engine is started. I'm on the parking lot and ready to get the weather. So we'll go through the checklist. We'll make sure that the startup checklist is complete. I'm leading the mixture right now, and that's part of the startup checklist. We don't want to put a lot of fuel and overflow the plugs, the spark plugs. That's why we're leading the mixture, as we don't know how long it's going to take for us to taxi to the runway. And that's exactly what we're doing. The red knob allows us to do that. Flaps go up. We're starting to go through the flow and check all the gauges for the fuel pressure, voltmeter, everything. And avionics, check the avionics master switch. And just looking at all the electronics, making sure everything is set up. All the radio panels are set up, the right frequencies, and in a few seconds we're going to start getting the weather, and we'll get our airport pressure, and we're going to enter it in for the right altitude. And here you go. We've got our avionics on and basically going through the flow, going through setting up everything, and I just literally set up a local area map, so I see things all around me. I'm checking the radios, and just continue through the checklist. So I'm checking all the lights. The beacon goes on, the nav light goes on, and I'm ready to copy the weather. So the way I copy weather is I use ForeFlight and I use digital scratchpad option. Right now I'm switching to ADIS and listening to ADIS information. In this particular airport, the Palo Alto airport, the ADIS information tells us that we need to advise the departure request on ground frequency, which is quite unusual. Typically you do that either through clearance or you do it at tower level, but here we do it right when we request taxiing to runway. So through ADIS, I've got the wind, which was the most important thing for me. I've got the ladder for the weather. I'm checking if everything is looking good, if the frequencies are all set up, and I also like to check that my headset is connected to ForeFlight. And Zulu, I have Lightspeed Zulu 3, and it's really funny this way. I didn't know there's a little button at the very bottom of the control switches of the Zulu 3, which you need to press for the ForeFlight to take over the radio. So when you have traffic alerts, they're loudly enunciated. Now, once we've got the weather, we're ready to call the tower. And the way I call the tower, I would say Palo Alto ground, Cessna 305 Romeo Sierra, at cable row parking with Quebec request, Dumbarton right departure, or if I'm doing the local pattern work, which this is the case, I'm going to say local pattern work, ready to taxi 3-1. And in this case, what tower would tell me is 305 Romeo Sierra, taxi via, and then it would give me advisory how to taxi. This funny particular airport, Palo Alto, tower is only allowed to give us advisory taxiing suggestions, basically. So they're not telling you how to taxi. They say advise And that's the reason is because not the whole taxi area is visible to the tower, but it's kind of mandatory. You can probably taxi on your own and just tell the tower how you're going to go, but almost everybody just taxi the way the tower says. So we've got the airport map right now. I'm checking the airport map to make sure that I've got all the instructions right, and we're going to taxi left from the hangar side and continue on Juliet, which goes along the hangar, turn right on Papa, and go to a run-up area where we would do the run-up. We have the airplane on the left parked right on the taxi line, but I'm going to go ahead and pull up so they see that I'm ready to go, and they would basically speed up their parking process, which they did gladly. I'm adjusting the mixture so it's not too lean. Starting to go, and I do the brake check. So this abrupt stop was a brake check. Quite important, right, for us to have a working brake, and that's what I did. Continue on. We are going to line up on this yellow center line for the taxiway, and those are the cable row parkings on the left. Those are quite temporary, but they've been there for quite some time. I'm going to stop right now to let the other guys move the airplane, but I'm kind of letting them know, hey guys, speed up because I'm paying for the engine time, and I'd like to keep on taxiing and get flying. Try an attempt to put my glasses on. I seriously need to get another glasses. Those are not really good, and later in the taxiing process, I'm going to just take them off because they're not too comfortable. An interesting thing, different airplanes in the club, I fly Cessna's 172s SPs mostly, and some of them are better, some of them are a little older, beat up, and you have to adjust to that. And later I will explain to you how I was trying to adjust to this particular airplane. Guys are all parked really quick. Good job. Thank you so much. And we are continuing on and taxiing towards the hangar. So the funny thing, remember I told you that tower does not see us, does not see the whole taxiway, and that's exactly the case. From this side, hangar side, and you can see the tower ahead of us. They don't see this hangar side, and they only can advise us to do specific maneuvers. On the left, you see the prices for the fuel. Avgas is $460 and Jet A is $360. Avgas is what we use for Cessnas, and Jet A is for turboprops and jet engines. $360, really good deal. It's a Rossi's aircraft hangar. He flies King Airs, and he flies beautiful airplanes, Piaggio and King Airs, and they're parked in this left garage. Right in front of us we have, it seems to be an RV, and the funny thing, he was not on the ground frequency. He just pulled up and blocked the taxiway, and I tried calling him and say, hey, RV, and by his number, asking what's the intention. Is he giving away to an aircraft, or what's happening? He didn't reply because he was probably trying to get his route ready, and then eventually he called the tower. Apparently that's how he was doing his flight planning and requesting his departure route, which is not great because he basically blocked the taxiway, and I was not able to taxi through, and he did not communicate that. So a few seconds later, he would continue taxiing gladly, and I'm just patiently waiting there. One thing that I started to use quite frequently, and it's just peace of mind. Obviously, the aircraft has a lot of timers. The aircraft has about 3 or 4 timers on board, and ForeFlight, the application on my iPad, has for a couple of timers. But I use a kitchen timer, and this particular kitchen timer is used by NASA's astronauts, and if you saw SpaceX's launches, they also use a similar type of kitchen timer. I think it's an old-fashioned tradition, and I really like it as well. It has several timers, and I put my timer for the remaining fuel, and I start the count up for how long I've been in the air, or the engine startup. We are continuing taxi on Juliet, and this is a taxiway Juliet. Following RV, he finally made up his mind to continue taxiing. really going through all those hangars where people park their airplanes. Not really exciting. The airplane on the right is a Civil Air Patrol, and there's been white and rather blue paint on the airplane. Oh my God, this guy's really confused. He wanted to turn right here, but it was at Quebec, and he needs to go right on Papa, which is this one. He finally was able to figure that out, and gladly for everybody, we are continuing to taxi. He was quite a case. So here, Juliet transitions to Papa, and that's where we're going. So back to the timer. I started to use the timer because it gives you a peace of mind and access to your endurance time, roughly calculated based off of 10 gallons per hour in Cessna. I'm overestimating it, but it's, as a student pilot, I would rather do that and have that handy, because I'm constantly scared of kind of losing track of the fuel, and I would rather have a timer that shows me my endurance. Continuing into the run-up area of Palo Alto Airport in Bay Area, California. Everything is set up. I've checked all the gauges. I've checked the headings. I've set up all the radios. ForeFlight is ready to go. It's quite a hot day, so I opened up a window just to add some fresh air. We're turning onto Yankee, and we are going to pull up to one of three run-up areas, which will be this one, the third one, right behind this RV, and we will be performing our run-up. Our run-up is a procedure where we check various elements of the engine, making sure the engine is correct and flight controls are correct. And once we're ready to do a run-up, we're going to close all the windows, and that's part of the checklist. I'm going to check everything here. I'm going to put iPad aside so I have my checklist right in front of me, and we're going to start with flight controls. Flight controls, I'm looking to the left, I'm looking to the right, and I'm going into one direction, and I'm going to go the opposite direction to make sure that all the pulley cables are properly attached, and I'm able to control the airplane into one way and the other way, left and right. So we're checking. I've decided to adjust the volume of the radio, and everything is good, and we're ready to do the run-up. The guy in front of us already doing run-up. You can tell it by the prop, and we're just going down the list for the run-up. Kind of reading it through. We're fuel on both, mixture reach. Now we need a reach mixture to test magnetos. We're going to go 1800 RPM, and we're going to check the magnetos. Magnetos are physical devices that create spark plugs, and we have two spark plugs on each cylinder. They're independent, and they're fed by two separate magnetos, and we check those two magnetos, making sure they're working. If something is not right, we're not flying. So magnetos are important. Once we did this, we're going to check the oil pressure. We're going to check all the gauges, and we're going to check the amp meter by pulling the flaps up and down. Checked everything, and back to 1000 RPM on Cessna, which concludes our main portion of the run-up. We still need to check all the gauges, the headings. So we're checking the mag compass. Since the heading indicator is a gyro, if over time it drifts from their original values, so you have to align that with the mag compass, which makes sense. We basically checked most of it, and I'm taking extra time. Again, I'm still a student pilot. I'm far along the educational process. I probably got about 10 hours left until my check ride, and doing a solo flight. But I'm still going through everything slowly, checking everything thoroughly, making sure I've double-checked everything. And now the time is to talk about the speeds, the decision speeds. So we should be up before the second taxiway, and if not, we're gonna abort the takeoff. We rotate at 55, we climb at 674 VY, and we glide if engine fails at 68. So far the wind has calmed down, and there is no chance of coming back. There are certain maneuvers, they're rare, and you have to know how to execute it with the right wind, but there is a profile where you can turn around and land back on the runway, but you need a very good headwind, no less than 10 knots, and a good performance, climb performance to do that. So if engine fails, we're going to land straight to the marsh, and there are power lines to the right, and we're going to see that as we take off. But hopefully everything is good, but it's better be ready and prepared. So I called the tower, told them that 305 Romeo Sierra run up complete, and they told me to taxi Yankee 1, hold short Yankee 1, and contact tower. We are taxiing further through the run-up area, straight to run-up area. I'm adjusting the volume there. Closer to Yankee 1, which is coming up to the right. That's the first turnout to the runway. As I approach Yankee 1, I'm going to flip towards the tower frequency, and I'm going to announce the tower Cessna 305, hold short Yankee 1, ready for takeoff. This is Yankee 1. And telling the tower that we're ready to go. The tower is going to reply back and say, hold short, pull up and hold short 31, which they did. And there is another hold short area for runway 31, and that's where we will await our clearance, a takeoff clearance. Yep, that's the left. On the left, you see that line. Never cross that line without in a towered airport without getting clearance. That would be a pilot deviation, and we've seen cases of student pilots crossing it just a little bit, and you would be considered an airplane on the runway. Everybody would have to go around, and it's a pilot deviation. You would have to get a number and talk to the tower. We've got the clearance to take off, and tower told us Cessna 305 Romeo Sierra, clear for takeoff 31. And typically they tell us to either extend our departure leg or upwind, as a lot of the pilots say upwind, but the new terminology is departure leg, to the Dumbarton Bridge or outer bridge. He said, we're ready to take off. Full throttle, and look at me, I'm just keeping my finger on that throttle. I've been told and I've been taught that do that every time below 1,000 feet. We need power if something happens. So we rotate at 55, we climb, everything is great. You see those power lines to the right, there's marsh right ahead of us, all sorts of landing spots. We want to avoid those power lines to the right, and if something happens, this is a field where we would land, and as we constantly fly, we need to kind of keep an eye on proper areas to land. For the Palo Alto Airport, the pattern altitude for the right traffic pattern, which is unusual, the typical traffic pattern is the left traffic pattern, and it's typical because you're in the left seat and you can better see all the turns and the airport from your left seat, so the right pattern is not usual, but due to the Bay Area and noise abatement procedures, and we're very close to Palo Alto, Stanford, and all the big guys and big shots, we have to fly the right pattern to do the noise abatement procedures. The right pattern, so if they route you through the left part, you would fly 1,000 feet. The right pattern is 800 feet. They extended us to Train Bridge, which you see right underneath us, and we're turning crosswind. We're turning crosswind, and we're at 800 feet. Since we flew a little bit off course, and that's how you should fly for the noise abatement procedures, the crosswind lag is quite short because we're turning away from the airport. This is a beautiful bay of San Francisco Bay, and you see you don't really see it, but San Jose Airport right in front of us, the Palo Alto Airport to the right. And we're getting to the point where we're starting to get ready for our landing. We are on the downwind, and we're going to do our before landing checklist, which requires us to check the fuel switch, which should be on both. Mixture should be rich. Seatbelt should be fastened. And we're basically ready to go. I'm looking at ForeFlight constantly to see where the traffic is, but also air traffic control. The tower tells us where things are, and they just cleared us to land I believe number 2. So we have one airplane ahead of us, and I just pointed it for my own sake, saying, hey, that's the airplane. Have it in sight. I'm reducing the power right now. We are beaming the numbers. We are reducing power, and we're starting our descent into Palo Alto Airport from here. My goal on all the landings is to make a very stable approach, be right on the numbers, and take my time to stabilize the airplane and be on my landing profile, the best landing profile. But the best landings happen when you have a very good approach. When you set up, everything is great. You are ahead of your airplane, and that's why Cessna is great to learn to fly. It's not a super demanding airplane. It's not super fast. It's very stable and allows you to set up and feel comfortable. So we are turning base, and this is a base lag of a pattern. We already into our descent. At this point, we're going to go flaps 20 and start reducing our speed to 70 knots. That's what we're looking for in the descent for base lag. And shortly after, we are going to turn final. Now we are on final. The speed is right around 70 knots. I'm lining up with the runway, and you can see that this time around I'm adjusting my turn to join the final as I overflown a little bit. And that was the theme for that flight. I was kind of overflowing a final all the time. We are ready to go. We are ready to land. Everything is good. Flaps go 30. Now we have the full drag. We're looking for 65 knots. And we are right on the numbers. The aim point for me is right before the 3-1 numbers, and that's where basically gonna touch down, nose up. We're gonna hear a stall warning indicator and a good landing. As we brake, and the brake on the Cessna are on the back wheels, we have to pull the yoke all the way up. So we apply the maximum pressure on the back wheels, and we firmly use the brakes and slow down. And now we're going to exit runway 31 into the taxiway Zulu on the left side. Now we are clear of right here. We're clear off the runway. We're gonna taxi back up. Before we do so, I'm gonna clean up. I'm gonna clean up the airplane as we taxi up. Flaps are gonna go up. Typically, if there is a huge line for the departure, I clean the mixture and make sure we don't foul the plugs with a lot of fuel, so it's not too rich. But in this case, we don't have a lot of airplanes in front of us, and we can just keep the mixture rich. And there's been a rabbit on a taxiway Zulu, and there has been a lot of wild live activities just in general. So I did a PIREP to the tower, said there is wildlife on taxiway Zulu, and there's been a couple of more rabbits waiting to cross the taxiway. And you want to do that for the other guy who is right behind you or who is on final. They know what to look for in this case. In this case, the guy was taking off. If you see birds flying through or see birds kind of thermaling at a certain spot, I always do a PIREP. I always say to the tower that I see either birds on final, short final, or at a departure lag at a certain altitude. So we're continuing on taxiway Zulu. We've done our first landing. The funny thing, the Palo Alto airport has not a very long runway, and the runway at Palo Alto airport is just 2,443 feet, which is 2,400 basically. It's a short runway. By the club rules that I fly, I'm not allowed to do touch and goes on runways shorter than 3,000 feet. And obviously Palo Alto being 2,400 does not allow me to do touch and go. So I have to land, I have to do taxi back and depart again. So that's what I'm doing, taxiing back, which is a good exercise. It's a good exercise to do full stop, and I prefer touch and goes a little more. It saves you a lot of time. You can double the number of landings. Especially here in Palo Alto, we have one runway, and if it's a busy day, you might be on the ground for 10-15 minutes just waiting for your departure. I got lucky. There was nobody ahead of me, and tower basically cleared me into the runway. They said Cessna 305 clear for takeoff, 3-1, and I'm ready to cross the whole short line and line up for takeoff for my second one. Always check the final when you turn into runway. Even when the ATC cleared you, they do make mistakes too. Just make sure that there's nobody on final coming in to land. Where to go? Full throttle, and we're going. Airspeed is alive. We're at 55, and we rotate, gently rotate. We look for 74. We look for VY. That's our best performance to climb, and this is how I fly. So I would look for 74. I tried to keep 74, which gives you a really, really good rate of climb, especially here because I'm alone in the airplane. It's quite light and allows me to gain altitude quite nicely. And it's good, right? For a single-engine airplane, altitude is your friend. Higher you are, more options you have if engine fails. Again, we're coming up. We are again on the right traffic pattern. I'm going to erase the right wing because it's a high-wing airplane. Cessna is a high-wing airplane. When you turn to a specific side, you raise that side to make sure there's nobody there. No, you see everything, and you see where you're turning. I do that probably half the time. I should do it a little better, but I try to do that every time and just at least look there, raise it, and turn it around. Unless I've just done a clearing turn, which basically what I'm doing here is a clearing turn already. I've just turned 180 degrees, and I saw everything all around me, and I'm on a downwind right now. Again, the pattern, for those who are not familiar, a pattern is basically a box you fly, and it has specific legs. It's like a highway intersection or some sort of highway exit or entrance. Same thing. There's certain turns you have to do, certain spots you line up. And look at this. So I got my flashlight, and I felt uncomfortable somewhere on the rudder pedals beneath me, and I needed to check if everything is good, if they are not obstructed or anything. My friend really gave me a really great present. He gave me a toolbox and a flashlight, and they're always on my belt when I fly. And this is a perfect example. I needed to kind of get a look at it, make sure everything is clean. I flashed my flashlight down there, and I saw that there's nothing obstructing my rudder pedals. Gave me a peace of mind. So pre-landing checklist: make sure rich, fuel on both, seat belts are checked, flaps are up. So I'm gonna check on a flight. Just check a few things. Got an extension, quite a long extension, to fly the downwind, and I had some extra time. I was very stable, and I did this. But I use my phone to as a tool as well. I use ForeFlight sometimes there to train too, to fly with my phone. When I get a chance, I pull it out, open ForeFlight, and I look at ForeFlight, how it looks and what's the interface on the phone. We are on our base leg. We are ready to go. We are going flaps 20 degrees and adjusting for 70 knots. Looking for 70 knots, and we're basically turning final. Since we've got extended, we are turning a little bit further away from the airport, which means I have to do the power reduction just a smidge later. Now we're turning into final, lining up with the runway, and you can see the runway right ahead of us. This is an interesting area. A lot of the wildlife activity happens here. It's a wildlife preservation area, and I see a lot of birds thermaling, geese flying. You have to be really careful, and you have to look around of things. And if something goes south, you have to be ready for the bird to hit the airplane, especially on short final. And, obviously, for that, you also kind of run through all the numbers and all the different procedures. So we're coming short of final in the numbers. We're all ready to go. The speed is 65 knots, and we have full flaps. And made the runway, power off, a flare, a little bit more flare, and touchdown. And again, yoke all the way up, and we'll see if I do this here, but for the most part, if I'm using the full length of the runway, I might not go really hard on the brakes, and that's what I did here. Full length. I'm going to exit onto Zulu with the last exit from the runway, which most of the time, honestly, I but I do exit much earlier. This just shortens your taxi time. It's just much better for practice, because you don't have to taxi as much. And look, every taxi adds up, maybe 3-4 minutes if you use the full length here. And if you do, 5, 6, 7 rounds, it's up to a pretty good number, and you're paying for it. So I'm cleaning up the airplane. The trim goes to takeoff position. The flaps went up, and I'm taxiing back. And the tower told me first time when I landed, check the mixture. First time when I landed, the tower basically told me taxi each time via Zulu. And look at the guy in front of me. He landed right behind me, but he's already ahead of me. And because he was able to slow down and stop before the first exit, or the second rather exit, and he cleared the runway right ahead of me. So the tower told me taxi back each time and advise on termination, meaning that I don't have to talk to the tower every time I exit the runway, and I taxi back and take off again for pattern work. And I only advise tower on termination. The last landing I do, I land, and I basically tell the tower that I'm done. In this case, I'm not done yet. We're going to do 5, and you will see an exciting go around, and I will tell you why I did a go around on this flight. There are several reasons why go around is really good, and it's a good decision. While I'm taxiing, it's a very slow speed. I have quite a few airplanes ahead of me. I am taking a photo. Guilty, taking a photo. But oftentimes, more often than not, I use my phone for weather. There's a weather app. I'm looking at the winds, and I will glance at it to just get the wind. It's a diamond star right ahead of us, turning. I think it is a diamond star. Yeah, it is a diamond star. He terminated, and he's going back to his parking. There is an airplane ready to go on the right, and it's Cirrus. Right on the right side. We just passed him. He's waiting for us to depart first, and then tower is going to clear him to line up right behind us. We're getting to the hold short line, and I'm getting ready for the departure. I'm adjusting my RPMs and tower. I'm ready to talk to the tower. There'll probably be a departure, arrival right before me, and so I'm lining up at an angle. And I've mentioned that before. I like to line up at an angle so I see the final approach all the way through, so I see all the airplanes coming in, getting ready to go. Just not sure what I'm adjusting my seat. That's what I did there. And right now, I think, yep, tower gave me clearance to go, and we're ready to go. Mixture rich. We quickly did the check, fuel on both, mixture rich. He told me line up and wait. He didn't clear me takeoff. He told me line up and wait. And I set everything up. And tower just told me to clear for takeoff, and full throttle. Airspeed is life, and we are off to another round. Runway 31. We should be up before the second taxiway. And look to the left. This is the first taxiway. 55, we rotate, and we're up already. This is the second taxiway on the left, and we're completely on the profile. We have enough power. We're climbing at 74. Beautiful. To the left, you see Palo Alto. This is East Palo Alto. After that piece of land, you will find Palo Alto Stanford University, and about 5-10 minutes away from here, Mark Zuckerberg lives, and right in front of the propeller, a little to the left, is where Facebook headquarters is. Their main building and a bunch of new offices that they've built. So we're coming up to 800 feet. We're going to level off, and you can see that I've raised the wing again and making a turn to crosswind. A beautiful imagery. So we are pointing towards Knoll Pass and Livermore. If you just continue to fly straight there, turning to the base lag towards San Jose. And in front of us, not only San Jose, but we also have a NASA airport, Moffett Field. It's a military NASA-owned airport. And finding out that Google has permission to park their jets, private jets, there, and only them, nobody else can park and land there. Super convenient, because Google is literally 3 minutes away from Moffett Airfield. And you can hop on a jet and go, or your personal airplane. And I know people who work at Google, they fly Cirruses, and they're top management at Google, and they also allowed to land there and park their airplanes at a Moffett Field, which is crazy and incredible. I believe that Google invested a lot of money into fixing a hangar, an old hangar in that airfield, Moffett Airfield. And that's how they got a deal to use the airport and share the usage with NASA. And it's a military airport. So we don't want to land there unless we have an emergency. The bottom line. And the airspace for the Moffett Airport starts right around here, and we often get extensions into Moffett airspace. And obviously, Palo Alto Tower has to approve those extensions with Moffett Tower, and they oftentimes do. Sometimes they don't, and you have to do not extend into Moffett airspace. And you see that airport right ahead of us, that airport, Moffett Field, and we're getting an extension again. You see, we keep flying. We should have turned base already, but since the airport's gotten way busier, we're extending. And it's a good thing, because Right ahead of us, you see two spikes of the amphitheater. That's where near that amphitheater is where the Google headquarters are, and that's where all the wonders at Google happen. We're turning base leg. Obviously, we extended, so we have to be a little higher, and we have to have a little bit more power, and that's why I'm reducing power right now to get on my landing profile. Lining up with runway. This is an interesting area. I like this area because you also have quite a lot of spots to land. You have a flat surface to the right, to the left. There's a little, small park there, and you can use some of those roads or some of the off-roads to land. There are lands to, some flat land to the right. You don't want to land anywhere here on the marsh unless you have to. Otherwise, you'll get a little wet, which is not nice. And we're ready to go. Flaps go 30. Yep, we felt the flaps went down. Flaps increase drag. They allow you to descend at a steeper rate. Speed is 65. And we're ready for power off. Flare. More flare. More flare. And a landing. So we're trying to slow down before the second taxi. Well, let's see if we can do this time. Beautiful. We're pulling the stick all the way up, applying brakes. And I've told that before, but you do this so you put more weight on your rear wheels where the brakes are, and thus make them more effective. Now the taxi back time is much shorter. We're again on Zulu. We're going to clean up the airplane. Flaps go up. Trim is going set for takeoff. Make sure the mixture is rich. I've adjusted my ForeFlight map because as you land, ForeFlight has a beautiful feature. Basically assumes you are at your destination. It zooms in, and you have your whole map of the airport right in front of you automatically once you land. But since I don't need the map because I'm taxiing back and I'm going to take off in a second, I would rather see all the traffic all around me and see if I have any extra traffic in the pattern. Kind of determine if I will be waiting more or not. So we have a window open on the left side, and maybe some of you might ask, can you open this window while you're flying? The answer is yes. You can open it. There is a limit, a speed limit, basically, when for that window. I believe Cessna does not have that limit, at least in the. I have to double check again. I have not mastered the manual for Cessna yet, but I'm going through it quite extensively, and I have done that before. I did open the window at a very hot day, where when it's super hot here in California, and there's no AC in my airplane. I would open up a window and I would get some fresh air for a bit and close it. Obviously, you don't want to do it at a high speed, but if you're in a pattern somewhere and you just need to open it up for a few seconds, not a big deal. Making sure to close it. The tower is going to clear us onto the runway and clear for takeoff shortly. And I'm looking at the ForeFlight and my ADS-B to make sure there's not a lot of other traffic. I just announced the tower that I'm holding short 3-1. And the reason I did this is because I see there's nobody in the pattern. There is nobody arriving or departing. And I'm a little confused because I don't see anybody. I don't see anybody departing. I see that runway is clear. And ATC does not give me any instructions. So I'm going to tell you another thing. I've attended a seminar where an ATC was explaining how they work, and if ATC is not talking to you, it does not mean he forgot about you. ATC is talking to so many different frequencies. He's not only handling your frequency, he might probably handle a couple of other ones, and he's constantly talking to departure frequencies and approach frequencies between other ATCs, clearing traffic in or out, coordinating IFR departures and arrivals, and all sorts of transitions. Somebody might be transitioning through Palo Alto right now, an IFR flight, or maybe a couple of them, and he's working with them to clear them through Palo Alto, maybe into San Carlos Airport, maybe through through Palo Alto to Moffett Field Air Tower or San Jose Tower. And I'm a little frustrated he's not talking to me, but sometimes they're just busy. Sometimes he's just super busy talking to all other different frequencies. We don't hear it, but it doesn't mean that they don't work. So we've got a clearance takeoff, and you saw that there was no arrivals right before me. There was no departures right before me, but for some reason I was just holding short of that 3-1. And we're ready to go. Again, full throttle, full power, gently. Engine is our friend. We don't want to yank it. We want to gently raise it, but firmly. We don't want to spend a lot of time on this runway. It's pretty short, remember, 2,400 feet. And we should be out before the second taxiway. We are. Rotate steep C5 and climb at 74. Everything is on profile, and we are good to go. We are continuing our flight. This is another traffic pattern. I'm going to execute it, and every time I fly a traffic pattern, I try to do it better and better, and I try to be on the numbers, perfectly on the numbers, perfectly on the glide slope. Not every time it happens, but that's the goal, right? That's the goal of the practice. Practice makes it perfect. I also practice talking to the ATC and listening to all sorts of different things. Now my go-to radio is Palo Alto Tower, or sometimes I listen to NorCal departure or approach, depending on the time of the day, and see where most of the traffic is. I like to listen to the frequency that covers San Jose airspace, so I don't listen to big jets coming into San Francisco all the time, because they're not fun. They're just talking straight plain 8 language and clearing ILS approaches all night long. Nothing interesting. And San Jose is NorCal departure has different frequencies around different areas, and San Jose has its own. And it's fun to listen because it does a lot of transitions through their airspace, and that's where you can learn more. So we got extended to the train bridge. ATC asked us for an arrival to extend our departure leg or upwind to the train bridge here, which we did. Now we're turning to the base lag. So here on the base lag, you want to be on your pattern profile. You want to be on a good speed, which is 75 for this airplane. You don't want to go any faster because you might have other airplanes in a pattern that are not as fast, and that you might be getting closer and closer, which is not nice. It's not safe. And sometimes you have to do S-turns or do a slow flight. I don't want to do a lot of slow flights yet at this point, especially over the water, and alone in a cockpit without an instructor. So I'd rather do slow flights somewhere in a maneuvering area where I'm at 2,500 feet or 2,500, 3,500 altitude, and I have enough altitude to recover if I stall. So this particular approach is interesting. So I did the pre-landing checklist. I checked my seat belt, checked the mixture. Everything seems to be going well, and everything seems to be going right. I did try to adjust the numbers a little bit, so I'm on the profile a little earlier, so I'm adjusting my power. And every time I did the approaches last time, I was a little too high. So I was higher than the glide slope, and I was trying to catch it and lower down the airplane a little bit. And last time I did a really, really good approach. So this time around, I decided to reduce the power just a smidge earlier, and I'm making my base turn. And now we'll see an interesting fact. So I'm right on the numbers. I'm a little slow. I'm on my base. Everything is good. I'm starting to turn towards the final. I'm a little low. As you can see now, the ground is a little closer than the last time. And right here, I'm very close to the airport. You see, this is the airport, and look at the runway. So I'm close to the airport, I'm low, and I still need to correct my final to get back on the final. So at this point, I don't feel comfortable because right here, I'm just on the glide slope, I'm low, and I'm not stabilized, and I'm making a call to go around. And I really like the way I did this. I didn't hesitate. I could have probably easily have done that landing. I probably could have adjusted the power. I would have catched the glide slope, slowed down on time, and I've done that many times before. But I didn't want to do this. I want to practice go around. And by the way, I did tell the tower that Cessna 305 room is here. Go around, and he said go around and extend to train bridge or outer bridge. He extended me a little further out for another arrival. I practiced deliberately to go around here just because I want to have this option easily available. And I've heard a lot of pilots don't like to go around because they want to just land, and they're so committed to landing. I always keep a go around as an option, and it's not a big deal. This pattern is quite short. It's going to probably take me 4 minutes to make another loop. Not a big deal. I'm going to get ready. I'm going to be better. I'm going to be on the right numbers, on the right altitude, and the right profile. I'm going to make a safe landing. So this is a great example of, and again, look at right now at the MAG compass. If you look at those buildings, those are Facebook. This is exactly where Facebook is. We're turning crosswind here. As I said, go around is a great option. Just don't hesitate. If you're not on the profile, if you don't like the way things are going, don't be a hero. It's much easier to just make another loop, be on the numbers, and make a safe landing, and a stabilized landing, rather than trying to catch the glide slope and trying to catch the final. And in that particular case, I was too low. I was not on the final heading. I had to adjust. And I was lower than the glide slope. So those things, and eventually I caught up with the final heading. I probably eventually would have caught up with the glide slope, adjusted the power. But all those dances with the power and adjusting the glide slope and adjusting the heading, this is not a good practice. That's not what you should be doing. You should be doing that right now. On the base leg, you should be really focusing on all the numbers and focusing on a nice landing. I had a little bit of a trouble there with my Zulu 3. For some reason, it got disconnected. I stopped hearing traffic alerts, and soon enough, I will figure out that my Sentry, or I believe it's called Sentry or Stratus. I think it is Sentry. Powered off for some reason, so I don't see traffic. I have to look out the window, but it's not a big problem. This is my final loop around the pattern. And there's not a lot of airplanes, and the air traffic controller is on top of it. And also, you have to demonstrate a good pilotage, right? You have to look outside of the window and see everything, what's going on around you, which I did. Majority of the traffic you see is right in front of you. If you see a traffic straight to the left or to the right, typically they are not no threat for you. Because at the speeds you're moving, and if you see him moving, or even stationary, it just, approaching you, you're going to probably miss him. The traffic that's dangerous is right in front of you, and if you don't see his movement. If you see a traffic and you don't see an airplane moving, it means either you're catching up to him or he's flying straight head-to-head to you. In this case, you turn away right and up. So if you want to, if there is a collision, you want this collision to be at the bottom of your airplane. So if worst comes worst, you knock off your landing gears and you're still airborne. So you want to preserve your engine and your wings, right? So if there is a damage, you want to have it at the bottom of the airplane, not at the top, or at least in Cessna, to save your wings. So you pull up and go to the right, and that's how you clear the traffic. We're great. We're on the profile, flaps 30, speed 65. We're ready for landing, and in a few seconds, power is going to go off. Right here, power off, and nice and easy. We're going to flare. We're going to flare more, and right on the runway. We'll try to stop before the second taxiway. I'm not sure if we're going to do this or not. Applying a lot of brakes, more brakes, more brakes, and we did a great job. We're turning off the second taxiway, exit, clearing the runway, and finishing up the day. We're finishing up the pattern work. We're going to clear up the runway. We're going to request the ground to taxi back to cable row. Thank you so much for staying with me and listening to the whole flight. If you're interested, subscribe, ask questions and comments. I will be posting more videos about flying. I'm passionate about flying, software, just life in general. Have fun, you guys. Break barriers and don't let people and anything else stop you. Just enjoy and have fun.